Welcome to another weekly Forex forecast. With Easter Monday coming up tomorrow and Holy Week last week, we have to be a bit more careful with price action structures. What could look like clean structures might also be just lower volume, and we just have to keep that in mind. We start here on the DXY on the weekly time frame, and we can see we had not much progression last week. We're still sitting here on the low of this overall range, and we know price can take some time before we see a clear directional move here. It can take a while for price to accumulate more volume for the next leg down, or we see a sudden break back in followed by a continuation for the next move to the upside. We can also see here on the lower time frame we are within a range. Here we are on the 1 hour time frame, and you can see price has no clear structure right now, and we are basically waiting for price to tapping into the extremes of the range to then see some form of reaction and then getting a clue what to do on the other dollar related pairs. We're moving on to euro US dollar on the weekly time frame. We can see not much has changed to last week. We are still within this no man's land. We were discussing last week this value area here to the left, this high here, which was the top of this 1, 2, 3 structure before we then got a bigger reaction. And you can see we are just sitting within this range. On the lower time frame here, we still have this gap here to the high, and we have this gap here to the liquidity area here, to this liquidity point here. So what are we looking for clear price action confirmation? I'm waiting here for price to either tap this liquidity area for a long continuation, or if price breaks to the upside, closing this gap and then breaking back in, then I would entertain a short continuation or basically change my bias. At the moment, I'm still leaning more towards a euro US dollar long trade. The next, Australian dollar US dollar on the weekly time frame. We had another bullish week. We were discussing this 1, 2, 3 move for quite some time, this volume accumulation here, this correction, and then we had the strong breakout, but it got retraced immediately by a very, very strong bullish week, or an even stronger bullish week, and then now we had a follow through, but we are still below the high of this overall correction here. Looking to the lower time frame, let's go straight to the 1 hour time frame. We can see here we have the gap to this value area here to the left. We finished this V-shaped recovery basically, and what we are looking for now is for price to either tap into the high and then break back in, followed by a continuation on the lower time frame, or then breaking just below this overall structure here, a bit more complex price action, and then followed by a continuation for a short continuation below. There's still more than enough room here, so we don't have to catch the top in this trade. Pound US dollar on the weekly time frame looks a bit different. We do have this gap here to the low, but we also have the gap to the previous high here, and we are more in a bullish momentum run. We did have here some volume accumulation here. We had a correction, and now we have 2 bullish weeks, and I'm actually now looking for price to give us one more bullish week, or at least tapping into this previous high, going down to the 4 hour, or even you can see here it's a start of a structure, or even to the 1 hour time frame. And what we are looking for here is 2 things. Either we have lower volume and we get a clear 1 hour structure here on top of the high, and then just like this is then more or less enough volume accumulated for the next move to the upside. So if I get a very, very clear 1 hour structure here, I would entertain a long in this area, because that would then also already lead into Tuesday morning session. So that would be enough time. Not really expecting that due to the lower volume on Monday. On the other hand, I would like to see price to tap this liquidity area here, this small liquidity area, finish this 1, 2, 3, which is a bigger bull flag continuation for a long. And this bull flag continuation is also visible on the 4-hour time frame, so we could trade that as a 4-hour entry. US dollar Swiss francs on the weekly time frame, you can see price is clearly overextended. However, it's in a bullish in a bearish momentum run. We still have room to go if we look at previous lows. So the previous low here is okay, that's a volatility week into the 0.7. So there theoretically there's still some room to go, and what I'm looking for right now is for the lower time frame to actually, you can see basically it's a similar picture what we shortly saw on the DXY. We are range bound, going straight to the 1-hour time frame, and I'm not really interested to trade anything within this range. However, we can see if price is stepping into these highs here, into the upper end of the range, and then breaking back in, followed by continuation, I would entertain a short. Same goes for this high here. We have here this low to the left. You can see it clearer here on the 4-hour time frame. That's the more significant low here to the left, which we broke through with a lot of momentum in the previous weeks. And if price retests this low basically, then okay, I would entertain a short from here. And on the other hand, if price taps into this low of the range and then followed by a lower time frame bull flag continuation, I would entertain a long in this area. Euro Australian dollar on the weekly time frame, we can see, there is more weeks, we have more room to the upside. We had a big gap here, we wicked towards this more significant value area to the left. We did not tap it, so we still have a gap here to fill. Going down to the 4-hour time frame, we can see we have a bit more complex price action here. We have these gaps here to the low to fill, we have the gap to the high to fill, we have a liquidity area here. We are within the range. Going to the 1-hour time frame, so what are we looking for right now? I'm looking for price to break out of this at least range within the range, so either tapping the low, closing these gaps here to the left, and then giving me some form of the lower time frame bull flag continuation. I would entertain a long from here. That would be the preferred setup. On the other hand, if we see an impulsive move to the upside outside of this structure here, followed by a clear bull flag continuation, then I would entertain a long from this area here, at least to close the gap here to the top. Euro New Zealand dollar on the weekly time frame, we can see here the difference here is we are actually coming from a value area, a more significant value area. We closed this, or we filled this week here, and we wicked through, and we have now the second bearish week in a row. Going down to the 4-hour time frame, so what are we looking for here? We can see we have a bit more clear structure. For me, the big difference is we tapped the high, and we also have a potential head and shoulder here, with the left shoulder head, right shoulder. Even though the right shoulder is slightly lower, then we are starting to form a structure below the whole. When you say like basically this is the neckline, so we start to form a continuation structure below the neckline. So this is actually kind of a very, very clean setup on the 4-hour time frame, clearly visible on the 4-hour time frame, therefore could also be traded on the 4-hour time frame. Australian dollar Canadian on the weekly time frame, I was leaning more towards a short initially, but then looking at it again, it's undecided price action. We tapped the low here clearly. We wicked through, and we now have the second bullish week, a follow-through week in a row. Going down to the 1-hour time frame, we can see here we have fairly clean structures right now. We're sitting on this previous low here. We're basically forming a structure through the low. So I'm leaning a bit more for price to finish this structure with this clear liquidity point, a small gap. I'd like to see a nice proper, this is basically section 1. I'd like to see a section 2 here. and then price tapping and closing this area here for a long continuation. However, if we see an impulsive break outside of this structure followed by a lower time frame bearish continuation, then of course I will change my bias and take the sign of the market. New Zealand dollar, Canadian dollar on the weekly time frame, very similar. We are coming from a value area here to the left. We have the second bullish week in a row. We looked at this pair on and off because price is respecting structure fairly well. We had this structure here. Sorry for that. We had this structure here tapping into this liquidity area. We sold off. We have a continuation structure here, a very strong V-shaped recovery. And now we are looking for on the lower time frame for some clear price action confirmation. Very similar picture to what we were looking at before. We have a liquidity point, we have a gap here, we have a potential expanding bull flag continuation, and we are looking for price to finish the third touch here for a long continuation. However, if we get an impulsive move outside below this structure followed by continuation, we will change the bias and look for shorts. There is more than enough room to play only the range from here to here. New Zealand dollar yen on the weekly time frame. We can see here we are also coming from a not as strong value area here to the left. We have a second weekly bullish week in a row. We are still in an overall downtrend right now, and we are looking for price action confirmation on the lower time frame. I'm leaning more towards a short. I don't really want to short Japanese yen in an overall more risk off sentiment. So therefore, I'm looking for price to finish a structure. So we started here, we just ever so slightly missed this liquidity area here to the left. And I would like to see for price to form a proper 1, 2, 3 into this liquidity area. And then I would definitely entertain a short. This structure again would be potentially or is definitely visible on the 4-hour time frame. So that's also something which is then more likely to be traded on the 4-hour time frame. New Zealand dollar, Swiss francs on the weekly time frame. You can see as well, price is overly extended to the downside. We have here a potential turnaround. However, again, overall, if we say an overall risk of sentiment, then New Zealand dollar, Swiss francs is basically primed to sell off further. And what we are looking for right now on the 1-hour time frame is for price to give us some more confirmation. And I'm looking for something very similar to what we saw just before with New Zealand dollar yen. I'd like to see price to finish a proper 1, 2, 3 structure into this previous low here, a more significant low to the left, and then I would even entertain, even if price is overall extended to the downside, but that can take a while, and price can go and tap the low again before we see a more significant change in sentiment and in direction. And therefore, it would make sense seeing a deliberate price action structure to then enter a short continuation again, even if it's only for the last push to the downside before we see a change in sentiment. So that's it. That's my watch list for next week. Thanks for watching. See you next week. Bye bye.